All right, thank you everyone for being here. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Like I said, you all were welcome to play the little game that I had set up at the beginning, and it looks like we have a few more people that had hopped on. We have Keisha from DC. Thank you all. I love this. We got like pretty much coast to coast covered on this call. That's a new accomplishment for me, so I'm just gonna celebrate in that. All right, so as we get started, today is called My Own Worst Enemy, and we're going to be exploring imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is something that has a really big buzzword going right now. It's really becoming at the forefront of folks' minds when they're starting to really think about, oh, wow, like, this is why I feel this way. These are why I feel like I have these inadequacies in life. And so as we look at imposter syndrome and we dive in, it actually goes pretty deep. So I'm excited to get started. And I'll just go from there. And if everyone who's on the call, if you don't mind muting yourself, we will have some time towards the end for Q&A. So feel free to just put yourself on mute. Like I said, your cameras can be up. I love seeing your beautiful, wonderful faces. Just please mute yourself so there's not a whole lot of feedback. So thanks are in order. I just want to say first and foremost, thank you to Kite Dart. So Citrine Unlimited is my coaching and consulting firm, but I do work closely with and partner with Kite Dart Group. They are also a coaching and consulting firm that is specifically geared towards working with entrepreneurs who are trying to look for alignment in their business and how they can, become impact driven. So how to make business, in the forefront of your mind, a tool for making change in the world. And that's what I do. And so we're very much aligned. Actually, my business coach is with Kite Dart. I totally believe coaches need coaches, therapists need therapists. And so they're supporting me with this event. And then I also want to thank Julie Clockston. Yes, if the name sounds familiar, it's because she is my mom, not my sister. People ask that all the time. She's on the line. She is a therapist. And I just thought it would be nice to have her, especially during the Q&A, because there is a fine line between coaching, right, and therapy. And so I thought it would be really great to have both perspectives on the line if some questions did come up in that area. So who am I? Who is Sydney? Well, I am, as I mentioned, I'm the owner of Citrine Unlimited, and I started this business actually because of the need of having to pivot. I had about a year ago started a travel business, and I was doing some advising and consulting through that. And with COVID happening and just me looking at what I needed to do in my personal life, I was like, what else can I do that causes transformations in people's lives? Because I got into the travel game because I was like, whoa, like travel is a great tool to inspire folks, to teach about new cultures and I love food, to experience new foods and different things like that. How can I apply that in another field and help people, even if it's not related to travel? So coaching really spoke to me, and that's just how I got started. So I am a certified life coach and also a certified life purpose coach. I'm also working on a couple of other certifications as well. But that really has helped me hone in on my technique around mindfulness. I love, my idea is, okay, you could teach a person, you could give a person a fish, right? They eat once. You can give someone the best plan in life. You could really help them organize something in life. But if you're not really working on that mindset, right, and how they can learn how to fish for the rest of their life, then all of that work that they paid for, they've been working on, could totally unravel. And as humans, we're creatures of habits. It's easy for us to revert back to our old ways. So I love getting out there and taking chances. I challenge myself all of the time. I put my own advice into action to try to face some of my own fears and to work on my own mindset. So this is me and my partner. Him and I were rafting last year in the Colorado River. one of the highest levels of water that they've seen in a while. It was thrilling, exciting, and a lot of fun. This is us. And sorry if I look away a little bit. I have two screens, so I'm not ignoring you all. This is me. I just love experiences. My best friend, she's a zookeeper actually, at an accredited zoo. And so this is one of their enrichment programs. And then I try things and they don't always work out. So this is me getting stuck inside one of those bubbles that roll down the hill. I tried it. I know I see a few people shaking their head. I tried it. It just didn't work. But that's okay. That's the whole point of life, right? Sometimes you try things and they just don't work. But I learned from it. I learned that that might not be the activity for me. So I'm going to just talk about now too, just what are the foundations I like to go by in agreements. I like to say oops or ouch. So if I say something that is offensive to you, I would love for you to feel comfortable enough to say ouch, right? And then maybe, offline, if there's not time for us to get into it during this, we could talk about that. Or, if I say something, I'm still learning, I'm still growing, and it came out incorrectly or not the way I wanted to, I totally will say oops. And just move on from there. Please be open to challenging yourself. When you think about it, sometimes things that you may hear may not necessarily apply to you in the example that's being given, but if you think about it in other ways in your life, it could totally work sometimes. And uncomfort can equal growth. Okay. So I don't want you to be uncomfortable to the point where you're like, oh, my life's at risk. Like, I really feel unsafe. But, I'm very open and honest. And with my clients, I'm open and honest. So I really like to make sure that, you understand that if you do experience some uncomfortable thoughts or feelings, that it does equal growth sometimes. And the whole concept of take space, make space. Feel free to share. I love it when folks share, but also recognize when you've maybe overshared and not allowed space for other folks to jump in and give their ideas and their opinions. So those are three of my agreements that I really like to speak with folks about. The other thing I like to say, while we talk about imposter syndrome, and we're going to get to perfectionism, I am dyslexic. And so you may see some words in this slide that are misspelled. So for all of you that are perfectionists, which are probably quite a few on the call, I apologize in advance. And that actually will come into play with you being uncomfortable and it equaling growth. So I'm testing you today. So let's see how you did with the game. All right, Emma Watson. Did you all get Emma Watson? Yeah? All right. If you don't know who Emma Watson is, then you're probably not a mega Harry Potter fan. I love Harry Potter. Well, let's look at a quote from Emma Watson. She said, "It's almost like the better I do, the more my feelings of inadequacy actually increases. Because I'm just going. Any moment, someone's going to find out I'm a total fraud and that I don't deserve any of what I've achieved." And that's Emma Watson, mind you, saying this, right? Like, tons of money, tons of popularity. She suffers from imposter syndrome. All right, next, Lupita. All right, let's see what Lupita has to say. "I go through imposter syndrome with every role. I think winning an Oscar may in fact have made it worse. Now I've achieved this. What am I going to do next? What do I strive for? Then I remember that I didn't get into acting for accolades. I got into it for the job of telling stories." Okay. She suffers from imposter syndrome. I think you can tell the theme by now. Ryan Reynolds, right? I love Ryan Reynolds. Okay. Man crush for me all day long. I went to a lot of events this year because of Deadpool. So you get into a tux and you try to look like a grown-up. But to be honest, I still feel like a freckled-faced kid faking it until I make it. And then lastly, Jennifer Lopez. Hers is a little wordy, but to shorten it up, I'm very insecure about my voice. After being told for so many years that you're not as good as the person or as this person or that person, It beats away at your insecurities. I always wanted to be a singer and a dancer, but when they started, when they start pretty much talking about you behind your back and talking about you in front of your face, she went, wow, I thought I was good at this. And really all she can do is not let it get to her. She's human. I paraphrased, if you can't tell. So yeah, that's right. They all feel like frauds. So what is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is a psychological phenomenon. It's a belief, right? That you're inadequate, you're incompetent, an incompetent failure, despite evidence that indicates you're skilled and quite successful. Imposter syndrome can affect anyone, okay? It can affect men, women, no matter who you are, no matter what your gender is or what you identify as, it can affect anyone. However, it is known to heavily impact women. When I look at who's on this call, it's majority women, and it can heavily impact BIPOC community. And if you don't know what BIPOC is, that's Black, Indigenous, people of color, okay? So there are 5 common types of imposter syndrome. There's the perfectionist, there's the natural genius, there's the soloist, the expert, and the superstar. And if any of these, as I go through them, you know, you feel like they kind of sound like you, don't be ashamed or afraid to speak up and say like, whoa, I felt like that. You might actually be surprised and find some solidarity in the fact that others may or may not have felt the way that you feel. So I think sometimes that can help. So the perfectionists, they set extremely high goals for themselves. And when they fail to reach that goal, they experience major self-doubt and worry about measuring up. Anybody ever feel that? You can raise your hand. You can put yes in the chat, whatever you want to do. And what does this look like? How does this come through? You may feel like, you know, that you want something done right, but you have to do it yourself. You know that old saying, oh yeah, I forgot. Yes, thank you for the thumbs ups and the claps. That's right, we can do that on Zoom now. You know, you feel like you want something done right, you have to do it yourself, okay? You have difficulty delegating things, right? Especially if you work on a team, you're like, ah! And some folks may have, although I don't like the use of this word, have called you a micromanager, right? When you miss an extremely high mark on something, you accuse yourself of not being good enough. You know, you're not cut out to do this. Whatever it is, whether it's in your job, whether it's personal, whatever that looks like, you're just not good enough. And then also beyond learning from errors, you know, because we all make mistakes in life, you actually ruminate, right? You keep thinking about, oh my gosh, like I'm so embarrassed I did this. I'm so embarrassed that my supervisor or a client or someone had to contact me and tell me, hey, you sent the wrong document, or hey, just so you know, you had a spelling error, hey, this happened, that happened. It can embarrass you, and it can stick with you for a long time. It could be months, it could be days, weeks, even years sometimes. All right. So let's see. Oh, there's my little chat button. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to show this scale too. I found this and I thought it was really interesting to go from, you know, what it means to be good, right, to a lot of people who don't have imposter syndrome, right? What good means. And usually good or being adequate is around getting something done around 75%, right? Excellent, right? 100%. But when you want to be perfect, you are just off the chart, like beyond what even is in that realm of, like I said, realistic, right? So natural genius, much like the perfectionist, the natural genius sets their goals extremely high. However, they also judge themselves based on getting things right the first try. So if something can't be done with ease or speed, it's very disalarming to them, right? So that's that person who maybe the first time I don't know, they play basketball, they touch the ball, they can't shoot it right, they can't dribble, whatever that might look like. They're like, I quit, I'm never touching basketball again. It sucks. I hate it. I'm done. In the way that this can manifest is that they can struggle to master a subject, a skill, or to create a masterpiece. If you don't get it right the first time, and I can imagine, I'm not an artist, but I can imagine if you're an artist and you have this natural genius, if you don't get a masterpiece correct, it could probably be maddening, not getting something right the first time. Natural geniuses, what's interesting about them is that they excel without a lot of effort. These might be some of the folks that, in school, you always knew that kid that just like barely needed to study. They just had it. Or you might have been that kid. You didn't really need to study. You just had it. I look at even my personal relationships between me and my siblings. We're all spread out a little bit. So I got to really reflect each time they went to a grade that I had already moved past. For instance, my sister, very smart. She's doing something that is extremely technical, but when we were in school, some of the subjects that I just like breezed through, she struggled in. And I was like, I don't get it. Like, why don't you get it? Like, we came from the same household. I'm not understanding it. So it can manifest that way. Natural geniuses can also avoid challenges because they're uncomfortable, right? They're scary. They might feel shame around them. So yeah, if you're feeling like you're a natural genius, it's okay. You can raise your hand. You could type a yes in the chat, whatever that looks like. I know also the other thing is, as I go through these, some of them you may feel like you connect to several or see yourself in a few of them. That happens. So the soloist, you do not like to ask for help at all. I see a couple of hands being raised. Yeah, you do not want to ask for help. If you do ask for help, you feel like a complete failure. And not only that, you get upset when people ask you if you would like help. Yeah, I'm seeing a couple of thumbs up and applauses. Yes, almost like it's an insult, right? You avoid asking for help even if you really need it. This idea of being self-made can rule this person's world. Like, I want to do it myself. Like, I want to be in Forbes magazine maybe as that self-made person. But in reality, everyone has some sort of team behind them, and that's what can generate success. And then there's the expert. Okay. So experts have this fear that they're never going to know enough, no matter what the subject matter is, they don't have enough knowledge. And I personally have seen this in my life when I was younger. Okay. I was like, okay, I want to start a business. I want to start a travel business. I just don't know enough. I don't know enough. But what was interesting, I'm going to jump down to this third bullet point, of not knowing enough. But the second one, they cringe when someone says they're an expert. I used to, and I still do, right? It's a process, cringe when people would say, oh my gosh, you are amazing. You excelled. Even me saying that right now, I'm like, ah! Although it's true in areas, right? It's funny. Other people can see something in you that maybe you don't see, right? You shy away from, there have been tons of positions that I personally have not applied for because I didn't meet all of those qualifications. I got off the phone. I do a lot of networking with someone, and that's part of my alumni association. And I was telling him, oh yes, I'm going to talk about this workshop. And I was like, he was like, what's imposter syndrome? He had never heard of it. And then I was like, yeah, I was like, well, the way it manifested in me is like, there have been jobs that I've passed up. And he's like, oh, I got this job and I didn't meet half the requirements. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, I just learned it on the job. I saw it, thought it would be cool, and I just applied for it and got it. So it's funny. A lot of times, we can hold ourselves back from actually achieving something and being the better candidate because of imposter syndrome. And then there's the superstar. So the superstar is AKA, you know, super, you might see it referred to as like superwoman, superman, super student. I liked to be non-gender specific, so I said superstar. And these are folks who feel inadequate in places others around them, or sorry, and they place others around them on a pedestal to prove their worth. So, you know, you might be the first to arrive and the last to leave, even though all your work's done. It's something about like, I have to prove that like I'm here and I'm available. You know, you may be convinced that you don't deserve even the current position you have in life. You choose to work, you know, instead of spending time with your family, instead of picking up that hobby you've always wanted to do and investing in yourself. You're trying to always prove your worth. Okay, so that's what the superstar is. So I want to talk about 3 techniques. Oh yeah, I have some people in the chat saying, yes, I have some folks in my life that are some of these as well. Yes. And you might see that in yourself or in some others that are around you. So I'm going to just say dozens, if not hundreds of techniques to overcome imposter syndrome. And it's not one size fit all, but I wanted to really pull out a couple that I think, especially in a group setting like this, would work really well for, you know, as large of a group we had. So let's get into action now. Speak up, break having shame as the ruler in your life. Who here, you could give me a thumbs up, you could wave, you could put in the chat, who here wants to have shame or have fear ruling your life? Anybody want that? Okay, I'm going to ask it another way. Who here does not want to have shame or fear ruling your life? Yeah, I think that's like pretty much mostly everyone. Okay, so something that you can do is actually just speak up about when you're feeling a certain way. That could be to a close friend, that could be to a therapist, to a coach, even to your journal. Just like getting it out there and putting it out there that I'm feeling this way validates your feelings, but then it also helps you to get some perspective on, okay, I'm feeling this way. Now let me think through this. Why am I feeling this way? You know, what can I do to move past this, to start working on this? Take a risk. So what would you do if you didn't have feelings of shame and fear? So I want everyone, I'm not going to force you. Plus I can't force you, right? We're virtual anyway. It's not like I could lock a door and keep you in a room. But I would really, really appreciate if you all would write a risk that you would be interested in taking if fear and shame were not in your life. Put it in the chat. I'd love I will read some of them out loud if there are any. Like I said, I'm not twisting any arms. And it could be just like how I, in the beginning, said I went rafting. Ooh, talk to investors and ask for money. Yes. Put more content on social media. Yes. Posting more about my business on Facebook. Yes. Showing up on video more on social media. Yes, I'm loving these. Y'all are giving me life. Keep them coming. Feed me some more. I didn't eat dinner. This is my food right now. Yes, creating videos for online, talking to C-level executives about my product. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Starting my own business. Yes. Running a self-sustaining business. I know that's right. Yes. Okay, cool. There are some awesome ones coming through. I appreciate all of you that felt comfortable to participate. Being more direct with potential clients. Yes, I personally feel that one, right? I'm like Miss Nice Person. I don't want to overimpose myself. I don't want to over communicate. I don't want to scare anyone away. So I totally get what you mean there from my perspective. Yes. Yes, love you. I love how comforting to hear that you're not alone. Yeah, no, right? And that comes to the speaking up. Definitely not alone at all. So you wrote down a risk. You might have done it in your own personal notebook right in front of you, whatever that looks like. What I suggest that you do is you actually say it out loud. So I'm going to encourage you all to get off mute, unmute yourself, and let's say it out loud. Don't feel silly. It's okay. I know this sounds weird. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, a couple of seconds to get off mute, and then we'll all do it together. I think I'm going to go with one of the ones I heard too about speaking up with clients. All right, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna
community. All my businesses community.
Speak up to clients. I love it. Thank you all. You can put yourselves back on mute. Now that you've said it out loud, tell another person what you've said and actually keep within integrity. Do it, right? Actually give it a try. What's the worst thing that could happen? It's better to have tried than not to have done it at all. Okay. So I'm very proud of all of you that were able to get on and say something. Now, the next thing is to reward yourself. So something folks with imposter syndrome do not do enough is actually take praise well and reward themselves, okay? So this can look different. There's a literally, like I said, tons of ways that you could do this, millions of ways you could do this. I just put a couple of examples. Pick up a hobby. You've been always wanting to learn sign language. Take a sign language course. You can learn it online. I'm sure you could find it somewhere for free or close to nothing, right? You've been wanting to learn another language. Pick it up. There's an app called Duo. My sister showed it to me. She was learning Spanish. It was free. Do it. Take time to do it. Take a day trip. Actually get away. Get away from your computer. Heck, sometimes I leave my phone. People don't like that when I do it, but I leave my phone sometimes and I just get away. You know, I live close to Red Rocks. I'll go up to Red Rocks in the morning, take a nice walk, or even just drive around, whatever that looks like. Take a day trip. And in my opinion, please practice social distancing and safe practices if you get out of your car. And create a ta-da list, okay? And this might not be something that many of you have heard of, but when we look at mindset, and as you work on your mindset, and there's a lot of work around, you know, building and reframing a new mindset, a lot of times we have these words associated that can be negative. So when I say the word to-do list versus ta-da list, in the chat, will you write which one sounds more positive to you, a to-do list or a ta-da list? Which one's more positive? Yeah, ta-da! Yeah, exactly, ta-da! So a ta-da list is literally taking away the power from that word to do. And if it doesn't get done, that's okay. Because what you're doing is you're celebrating everything you do complete. You're actually saying to myself, ta-da, I finished this. Like, awesome. It's like a little micro celebration. And something like that can really help to start reframing your mindset. And then last, I threw in an extra one. I couldn't help myself, right? Is seeking coaching, okay? As I had said several times, there's tons of ways to really look at how to uniquely overcome imposter syndrome. And there's no one size fits all. And so I really encourage you all to seek coaching and start creating and reframing your mindset. And that really provides you with accountability. The way I look at coaching in this case is much like going to the gym, okay? You buy that gym membership, you go once. Do you see any results from going once to the gym? No, right. You buy that membership, you go to the gym several times throughout, you know, the next 6-7 months, you go maybe 3-4 times a week. You start seeing results. There's different things you can do, right? Like I said, not one size fits all. Maybe you go to a Zumba class. Maybe you just do floor workouts. Maybe you're working on flexibility and stretching. Maybe you're working on strength. Maybe you're swimming. You know, there's all these different ways that you can seek transformation of whatever your goal is. That could be to lose weight, to get lean, to get muscular, whatever that is. And so coaching is very much the same. It's coming to this one time, unfortunately, is not going to change much. Okay. So for today, and because of COVID, I wanted to make sure that everyone had affordable access to coaching with me. So I'm doing a $50 deal where new clients get up to 16 sessions for 4 months for $50 a session. And I passed over one more. I'm going to send out a survey. I have also a class called Eliminating BS. And so this is where we're going to really start looking at limiting belief systems. Imposter syndrome is one of those limiting belief systems. And really talk about in 2 hours, dig deep, do a workshop on what are those belief systems, breaking those down. How can we start to work on, what are some tools and tips you can start to work on to remove those out of your lives? And then actually, how can you move forward with, reframing your mindset, actually going into a growth mindset? And so I wanted to also make that affordable as well. So I'm giving away 2 scholarships. The class is $50. I'm giving away 2 scholarships by completing the survey and clicking you would like to be eligible for the scholarship. And so that will come in to an email. So it's Q&A time. I'm going to invite Julie to hop on. Yes, I call my mom by her first name. I know it's weird to a lot of folks. I'm going to invite Julie to hop on. And first, do you have anything to add before we take any questions from folks?
I just want to thank you, Sydney, for doing this webinar. Imposter syndrome, as you said, affects a lot of people, and I actually believe that it affects people not only of an adult age, but children as well. And being that I've been in school for a really long time, I've since graduated, I have experienced imposter syndrome myself, and as you were going through the 5 types, I was clearly able to pick myself out in different areas. A lot of people feel very isolated. They don't realize. In fact, I had someone tell me today they didn't even know this was a thing. When they were describing to me how they're feeling, I run a group for doctorate cohorts. And I said, you know, what you have going on is very normal. So normalizing, first of all, imposter syndrome is important. And knowing that there are ways for you to overcome imposter syndrome and coping techniques that you can learn in coaching and in therapy if you need that level to help you as you're moving forward. Because I think, Sydney, you said it has held you back from accepting jobs or going after job offers. It can really hold you back in areas of your life. So, and it can be quite uncomfortable and cause a lot of anxiety, which can also exacerbate depression. And anxiety and depression look a lot of ways. It doesn't always look like a person who's in panic mode. It doesn't always look like that person who can't get out of bed in the morning. Those certainly are both symptoms of anxiety and depression, but those are not the only symptoms. And sometimes people, including myself, are very functional and appear to be very well, yet internally they're struggling with these different things. So I'm also a big advocate for normalizing mental health. Every single human and animal has mental health. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. Everybody has it. There's no escaping it. We all have a physical health and a spiritual health. And so, you know, for human beings, a lot of times there's a lot of stigma surrounding our mental health. But when we don't share, that's where our fear becomes bigger than what it is and also feeds that imposter syndrome. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. I'll answer them to the best of my ability. I myself am suffering from imposter syndrome, like as we speak. I'm a recent doctoral graduate, and I'm being called an expert in the areas of research that I've done. And I actually have found that I have been pushing that away. So I'm doing some self-work right now. And I'm pretty transparent. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them.
Thank you. I appreciate you adding. I think everything that you said is really pertinent in the idea of normalizing and letting folks know that they're not alone, because there is that sense of shame that a lot of folks with an imposter syndrome receive. And really quick too, I would like to just explain the difference to everyone, the difference between therapy and coaching. So, because sometimes those words to folks who aren't, in the industry get intermingled and they're completely separate. A therapist has had years of educational training and certification through like the state or their home state that they're practicing in. Versus a coach is someone who takes their own personal life experience and helps to work with folks more in the sense of accountability, right? Like becoming your accountability partner, helping you to keep your word, helping to problem solve. And really, the sessions are led by clients, where in therapy, the therapist more or less helps to guide the client into their questioning and uncovering things. In coaching, we work together on a different level. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that too, because I get that question often. But with that being said, any questions at all? Now's a great time to maybe comment if you got anything out of this, or if you have any questions. I would love to hear them. And you're able to unmute yourself. Please don't feel like you have to type. So
I have a question.
Okay. Hi, Sky. How are you doing?
Hi. Good. How are you, girl?
Good. So nice to see you.
Yeah. Sorry, I was driving, so I didn't want to.
Be safe.
Didn't want to be on there. I'm wondering how. I know that it is a psychological phenomenon, but how connected is imposter syndrome to trauma? So I ask this because I am coming to terms with my own narrative as a person, and it's taking me 30 plus years, but I'm an abuse survivor. And so when I am looking at myself or the things that I'm achieving or doing, there are voices in the back of my head that are not mine, and having to challenge those constantly feels like it makes imposter syndrome harder to solve.
What I tell, and that's why I really wanted to describe the difference between coaching and therapy, because imposter syndrome can definitely be fueled by trauma. And not always, but it definitely can play a role, right? There are some folks who have never experienced what we would consider trauma, and they're still telling themselves these narratives in their head. And then there are folks who have actually had these things by outside influences told to them to make them feel this way. And so I think they're very interconnected sometimes, and that's where it's great to distinguish the difference between, okay, do I need therapy, or do I need coaching, or do I need both, and come up with a plan that works best for you. Do I need to go to a therapist first and then go to a coach to just sustain? Or, you know what I mean? So definitely, that's a great question. I don't know, Julie, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with you, Sydney. And you gave an excellent description and explanation. Definitely trauma can fuel and exacerbate imposter syndrome, especially if it's what we call ACEs, which are adverse childhood experiences. So that's trauma that takes place for children. And really at any age, along the line, we have what is called little t and big T trauma. A lot of people think that post-traumatic stress disorder only happens in the military community, or for something that you would consider extremely a huge trauma or something very traumatic. But in reality, people can have very traumatizing experiences that are outside of those parameters and still end up suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder or symptoms of that. And there's also something called CPTSD. It's not in the DSM-5, but it's widely recognized in the mental health community, and that stands for complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and it comes from a series of traumatic experiences. So something like being a survivor of abuse of any sort can definitely lead to that. And then what happens is anybody is subject to having imposter syndrome, but you're also dealing with the traumas that keep coming up and keep getting triggered in conjunction with the imposter syndrome a lot of times, which just sort of illuminates it. So I would definitely suggest, if you are someone on here, and thank you so much for your courage in asking the question, getting therapy so that you can work through the traumas in your life and process those, and also getting into coaching so that you can set goals and plans for moving forward in your life, as far as your business or, you know, just different goals and aspirations that you have in those areas.
Awesome.
Thank you. That was so helpful.
Yeah, thank you for asking. And we had a question also come up in the chat. How do you convince yourself if it's okay to take time to take a break? Take a day trip or do a hobby. I feel like if I stop trying as hard as I can, the world will stop spinning. All right, I'm raising my hand to that one. Anybody else ever feel that way? Like if you slow down, then the ball's just gonna drop. Yes. So that is a wonderful question. Thank you for asking it, Crystal. I appreciate it. So really, when you have so much going on in your life, I think it's really important to do a time audit. And that's one of the tools that I use when working with clients, is to actually audit your time. Find out where you're, actually take a step back, right? And look at, how am I spending my day? Is what I'm doing actually truly productive, or am I running in circles? Because you might be surprised that there are some days where, sure, you feel busy, and you are busy, and then there are some days where you feel that way, but you're really not busy, or there's just something that's in your life that you could take out. And I like to compare this very much to someone on a budget, okay? I don't know about all of you on the call, but I personally have had to before put myself on a budget, right, and cut out expenses. I've been there before. And so when I'm doing that, I'm doing a budget audit, right? I'm looking at what's necessary in my life, what's not necessary in my life, and those things that aren't necessary, okay, do I really need them? Do I really want them? And having a conversation around that. And so when you can take a step back and put a plan together, around your time and what you're spending it on and what you're committing to, that actually can be a release and relieving sometimes, and free you up for things like, doing that hobby, taking that day trip, or even sometimes being more effective within your profession, not being a yes person to everything, because you want to help everyone. But if you help everyone, it might not be the right fit or opportunity, or where your skills are best used. So that's what I personally suggest. And one of my favorite tools is that time audit.
Yeah, can I just say that self-care is extremely important, and it's actually equal to self-love. A lot of times I'll have clients who will say, I don't even know how to love myself, and I will explain to them that love is really not a feeling, it's an action. We think it's a feeling. Feelings are fickle, but loving yourself is taking care of yourself. And self-care can look a lot of ways. It can be going to get that manicure, that pedicure, and maybe not so much during this pandemic time. But it can also be, you know what, I'll feel better if I wash those dishes. I'll feel better if I just veg out and watch television today. It can look a lot of ways, but I will tell you, whatever it is for you, it's extremely important for your mental and your physical health, and not taking that time will burn you out, whether it be psychologically, emotionally, or physically. At some point, it will come to a head. And at some point, it can be quite disastrous. So I encourage everyone on this call to figure out, just as you do your work schedule, your school schedule, or whatever, figure out and put yourself on your own schedule for taking a step back and taking care of yourself.
Awesome, thank you. And we had another question. Could you talk about procrastination and imposter syndrome? Is this is this something that shows up? Yes. Yeah, I have someone raising their hand. Yes. Believe me, it can. So, which is funny. And you might actually see this happen if you are a perfectionist, right? Like you want to get every detail. Oh, I got tons of thumbs ups. You want to get every detail right, and you're just overwhelmed and you can't get every detail right? So why even do it? Where do I even start? Like, how do I just take a bite of this huge monster burger? I'm thinking of my time at the county fair. There was a burger this big, and I was like, I don't even know where to start. So, so it definitely can show up as procrastination. And I like to say that your passion is more important than procrastination. So passion over procrastination. Just start somewhere. Okay. And I know that's hard, and there can be, and that's the point about either seeking therapy or coaching, right? To have someone help you work through that. But just getting started, break it down into little chunk sizes. So do you know what I did with that monster burger? I actually asked them for a knife and a fork. And I was like, I need a plate, I need a knife, I need a fork. And I cut it up and I started eating it. I didn't eat the whole thing, by the way, you guys, I would have got sick, but I started eating it that way. So yes, that's an awesome question. It's really funny, right? Especially if you are a perfectionist and you're a high achiever, you get a lot done, but then you can find yourself slipping into procrastination because of overwhelm. So love that question.
Yeah, I also find that generally, I don't believe as a therapist that people are lazy. And I feel that they procrastinate for a reason. And usually it's fear-based or avoidance because of anxiety of some sort. And you don't have to have a diagnosable like anxiety or depressive condition in order to experience symptoms of anxiety. It's just a human reaction to basically overload of your nervous system. So we have these chemicals that are freeze, fight, or flight, and the half-life of those chemicals is 13 hours. So these chemicals flood your system, and you know you're in fear and you're procrastinating doing something. You may not even realize these chemicals are a part of the process in your system, especially if it's something that's an ongoing thing for you. But I find that the expert on Sydney's list of 5 different types of imposter syndrome are one of the biggest people to experience procrastination. A lot of it is from fear. They're afraid of being exposed, or that they are going to be found out as a phony because they can't produce this expert level to what they feel like is the expectation. Really, nobody is perfect, and so it's okay to make mistakes, and the only failure is not trying.
Awesome.
Great.
Any other questions?
Whoa, there's a lot of people on the phone.
Hey, this is Leander. How's it going, Sydney?
Hey, how are you, Leander?
Good. Let me not get my dirty closet in the view. There
What?
Oh,
Thank you for joining us. You look great. Did you get a haircut?
Yeah, I finally shared the
Yeah,
beard
you look fresh.
on. So I had a question. I was kind of wanting to ask about layering on white supremacy and systemic racism to this concept of imposter syndrome. And so I'll just do a quick little story of what I experienced. And I think, Sydney, I told you about this already.
Yeah.
But at my last job, you know, I am a social scientist. I have my master's degree. I worked for a very large organization that was primarily white. And when I finally get to my last supervisor, working at the global scale for this organization, you know, she was at one point in time, she's like, you know, I don't think you should call yourself a social scientist. And I understand like the level of jealousy and fear that she was experiencing from someone who, she had a PhD and I had a master's, but when people had a question about social science, they came to me. And I was already experiencing the imposter syndrome, just being at that level, being at the global scale. I was already freaking out that I even got that far. You know, it felt like Icarus kind of situation, right? And so then, but when she said that, my life was over. Like everything shattered. Like like it was like looking in a mirror of myself, and that mirror shattered. And it was like 6 months of spiraling depression. It was really bad. I probably should have went to see a therapist, but I didn't. I got out of it on the other side, better for it. Ultimately, you know, I left there. I started my own company. I'm the CEO. I'm the lead social scientist for my business. Everything's going great now. I'm happy. But, you know, it took that experience for me to push myself out of that really systemic racist organization and to start my own business to get out of that. But how do you, what advice would you give to the old me that was still going through that, or heard that when they heard that expression for the first time?
Yeah, so and that brings up a great point. And someone had mentioned earlier too, I think, or maybe I had mentioned, you know, other folks might be telling you, right, or adding to your own doubts and fears. I have a sheet which I can send out with the survey that actually talks about how perfectionism has been a tool used for oppression and white supremacy, especially in work culture. There's a whole list of different things. And so everything you're saying is correct and true, especially when folks start to feel intimidated by you. I've had similar experiences, and I know there are others on this call that have had similar experiences. The advice that I would have given to Oleander, right, pre-awesome entrepreneur, is to really start, especially if I was your coach, to really start looking at, okay, let's talk about what it is you're feeling. Let's maybe do a journal or find whatever method that outlet would be so that we can get out there what it is in your head. And then we can start going from there and looking at, okay, what are your goals in life? You know, what is it that you want to achieve? And starting the process of achieving those goals. And so that's something as a coach that I would have done. Now, the advice from a therapist probably differs. And so, Julie, you might want to add into that.
Absolutely. So the first thing that I would like to say is like, congratulations to you. I'm really proud of you for coming out on the other side of it. We are in corporate places, organizations, agencies, wherever we are as social scientists, dealing with systems that are in place that were not designed for Black people, Indigenous people, people of color, and they're operating exactly as they were designed. And people's mindsets are very rooted in those systemic oppressive ideologies. So the first thing I would do as a therapist is to help you, the old you, understand those things so that you could consider your source and that you could build up internally and understand who you are, and that it is not indicative of who you are, what someone else's opinion is, even if they have a PhD. The other thing I would explain to you, the old you, or somebody who's dealing with that now, is that is psychological and emotional abuse, what you experienced. And it happens not just in interpersonal relationships, but it happens in business all of the time. And it's highly abusive, and it spills over into all areas of your life, and you take it home with you. It's not something that you can just leave at the office at the end of the day, and it is very concerning. And there are different areas that a person who is perpetuating this abuse targets upon the victim. And sometimes it's done very covertly. And so it may even sometimes take a while to realize that a person is abusing you. Other times it's very overt, but that would be something that I would definitely work with an individual on in therapy, is recognizing the abuse, and then definitely how do they get out of that situation, or what do they need to do? I would support them in making changes so that they could either report it, although sometimes we know that HR situations, or even a lot of companies say, you know, there's no retaliation. We all know that that's not always the case. But either way, if someone came to me as you presented your old self, I would definitely work with them to figure out what are some ways that, one, I could help their mental health come up. And by doing that, that would help them as a whole person. But then also, how can we get you out of that situation so that you can move forward with a coach or in your life?
Awesome. And we're actually at time, so I don't mind hanging out a little bit longer, but before folks hop off, I want to be respectful and just close quickly and say thank you all for coming this evening. If you're interested in, you know, finding out more information about myself, about Dr. Clockston, about Kite Dart, feel free to fill out that survey. But also too, I would love to hear from you just in the chat. If there's someone that you're specifically wanting to hear back from, I saved the chats as well to make sure that I follow up correctly. So outside of that, we'll stay on for maybe another 10 minutes. Julie, can you do that?
Sure, I can.
Yeah, and we can answer some more questions and have some more discussion, because I think it's going really well. But if you have to hop off, I completely understand that and respect that. So, okay. Any other questions before we hop off? And Leander, sorry, did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely did. Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it. And I think the thing I would have to come to terms with is this concept of psychological abuse, which isn't a term that is very much used in the culture I come from. And so being able to address that in a meaningful way, while at the same time knowing that's not the norm, the social norm anyways.
Yes. All right. Any other questions? We can stay on.
Can I add just that with psychological abuse, a lot of times people confuse it with emotional abuse, but it can actually entail, it always entails emotional abuse, but it can actually be a little bit different. There are lots of different techniques that people use when employing psychological abuse. And so I'm happy to provide Sydney, and then Sydney, you can send out what the different terminology is, and description of each different area on the cycle that I have, so that can give people a better awareness and a better understanding. I'm happy to provide you with that.
Yeah, we'll do a resource sheet then. If you give me that, and then I'll also, like I said, those tools of white supremacy that I hadn't brought up, I'll include that as well. I have to dig through my email to find it.
Okay.
I think something that I'm also passionate about, and one thing I always tell my clients is, how are you sleeping? I know that might sound odd, but I'm serious. If you're not sleeping well, if you're not actually getting a restful night, enough hours, I've noticed a lot of folks who have imposter syndrome. You could give me a thumbs up if you feel like either you have insomnia or you don't sleep well. This would be great for everyone in the community kind of to see. I'm going to put a thumbs up. Sometimes I struggle. Sleep can be a huge factor too in how you perceive yourself. It's very interesting. I'm reading a book about sleep right now, and I'll send that also out. And I encourage you to read it and give yourself permission to take naps. Okay, so that's one of the tools as well. Honestly, give yourself permission. I did not used to give myself permission to take naps, and I would suffer through the day into the night, catch a second wind, and then be up till 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and then up at like 7 or 8. So give yourself permission to rest when you need to. It's hard. and it takes work, but I definitely would give that as a just random piece of advice out there. Someone needed to hear that, obviously. So it's not random. Someone needed that. All right, awesome. Before we, oh, go ahead.
I have, well, kind of one question. Dr.
Yes.
Clockston, I know you mentioned that you see it in children as well, and I think it really could be genetic. I see it in my almost 7-year-old. She is a perfectionist, and she constantly like wants to stop doing something if she can't excel at it right away. I'm just wondering if you have any little tidbits of information you could give me on how I can approach her in helping that, because I know it's kind of difficult with a child, especially when she doesn't want to talk to you about it because she shuts down.
Yeah, with kids, kids learn through play. And so if you could play therapy with her, like you could get a play therapist, or if it's something that you wanted to just have conversation with your child, just one-on-one. Sensory is really good. So I don't know if you have access to any sand, but having like, I know when my kids were younger, I used to have a sand and water table and like put little figurines in there. And a lot of times kids will reenact what they're feeling in those sand and water tables, and then you can actually follow up with conversation and ask questions, and you can get a lot of feedback from kids when they're feeling open to it. It's really hard if they shut down, you know, or they don't feel or can't really understand what you're asking, but they're really at their best when they can play. So maybe try engaging with her in some sort of activity, even if it's a game. I have some cards that have different feelings on them. They're good for all ages. And so sometimes with my son, we'll just use that deck of cards to talk about our feelings or what we are thinking when we're having those feelings. So there's things like that you can do to get her to open up, and then talk to her about, you know, the importance of giving herself some grace. And so for a kid, you might say, you know, you're still awesome. You're still, you know, amazing, even if you don't do everything right, or even if whatever that activity was that she was doing didn't turn out right. So start teaching her now that her self-worth is not indicative of always being perfect. Some personalities are just more perfectionistic than others. A lot of times it's learned behavior. So if you're a perfectionist, I'm not trying to put any guilt on you at all, because I am a perfectionistic type of person, and our kids watch whatever it is we do and emulate that. And so giving yourself some grace. So if you're not perfect on something, being open and saying, you know, even talk about your feelings with her. I really was trying to do X, Y, and Z, and it just didn't turn out right. And so I'm feeling a little bit down about it, but that's okay. I'm going to try again. Or so opening up conversation and letting her know that it's not her worth that's tied up in whatever it is that she's doing. She's worthy regardless. But those might be some ways in which you can open up some dialogue with someone who's 7. And hopefully that will be a little bit helpful for you. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Oh, it did. That was very helpful. I feel like I should pay you for that.
I'll send you the P.O. box. No.
Seriously, I'll Venmo you some money. You
No.
did it for free. I feel like y'all need to get paid for your knowledge and your expertise. So.
Well,
this is on me.
yeah. Well, so the thing is I actually have a lot of people who say, Sydney, you do these workshops and you do these events for free. Why are you not charging for them? And I do charge for some things. And, you know, Julie, Dr. Clockston charges for things. But then we're also both committed to giving back to the community, and this is our way of doing that. And so when you can catch a free workshop or something with us, it's quality. That's me overcoming my imposter syndrome and saying it's quality, and we want you all to be able to have access to the information. And if you do want to work further with us, ask. I know Dr. Clockston, you did trauma therapy with kids for several years. And so if that's an area and any of you have children on the line, reach out to her, and either maybe she can work with you or refer you to someone who's highly qualified to work with. So. So yeah, awesome. Any more questions before we hop off? I think we're doing good.
While someone's asking a question, I'd also like to.
Did I miss it? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, while someone's asking a question, something Celeste said made me think of grief and loss. A lot of times, grief and loss is not only a death loss, but it can be it can come from lots of different areas, and it can happen to us at any age. And a lot of times that will play into our imposter syndrome as well. So I just wanted to mention that for anybody in general on the call. It was just a thought that popped in my head when I was talking about play therapy, because I used to do a lot of play therapy every week with children who were suffering from grief and loss and had experienced a lot of trauma. So that's why I thought of that. But just wanted to say that if you are in any type of grief and loss, it doesn't have to be a death loss. A lot of times then a person will act out through a perfectionistic mindset to try and overcome that grief and loss or the feelings of it. So I just wanted to add that.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions before we go? It doesn't look like it, so we're gonna hop off. I just want to say thank you all so much for being here, for your time and your investment in being here. As we know, it takes a lot for you to pull away from your busy schedule, and I appreciate each of you. Please, please, please complete the survey. That's how you could repay us for today. That helps us, just know if we're on the right track, if the information presented was relevant, and if you want to have someone reach out to you for a follow-up. So I appreciate you all. This was an amazing session, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Happy Hump Day. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Julie, hold on real quick.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you have your recording going.
I know, I'm going to stop.